Good morning. So let's start with our today's topic, and that is fetal circulation. Now, why I like this topic? See, yesterday we talked about the vascular system. So you can say that vascular system which we learnt yesterday, that was like a finished product, right? It was like a finished product. So where everything is working effectively for years together, decades together, right? So that's what we see in adult or not adult, someone who has taken birth. So that is after birth, correct? But before birth, situation is completely different. So here, what really happens, and what I used to wonder was that how meticulously these things they occur, following the principle of physics, following the principles of chemistry, following the principles of biology, right, and whatnot. So over here we'll see that in fetal circulation it's a very dynamic system, and that's what we'll be understanding today. From the perspective of exam, yes, there would be only four keywords, right? There would be only four keywords. But at times, if we really feel like that, how the whole process occurs, when we'll be discussing congenital heart anomalies, right? At that point, we'll find that all these things they make a complete sense. Plus, when we'll be clubbing it with embryology, embryology. So it will be of great help. So let's start with our today's topic, and that is fetal circulation. So we know that what we discussed yesterday, that there is oxygenated blood, right? So that oxygenated blood which is from lungs, that would be carried to the left side, right? So left atrium, from there to left ventricle, from there it will circulate into the entire body via that aorta, which was getting distributed in via arteries and then going into the entire body, right? And then in the body it would use that oxygen, carbon dioxide is released, oxygen is used up, and then the return journey would start, right? All the venules and finally, right, all those veins they will be leading to supra cava and infra cava, and then via that it will go on the right atrium to right ventricle to it will go to lungs, right? And this cycle it keeps on going on and on. The big change in case of fetus, there are no lungs. Means practically there are lungs, but they are not effective. They are not using, because baby cannot breathe in the womb, right? Baby cannot breathe. So we have a completely different system. And that system is that, well, mother can breathe. So that oxygen, it is the placenta, right? Some background sound is coming. Really? What sort of sound? Maybe from the road, if anything is coming. Is the sound okay? Is the sound okay? Horn? Possible. I am very sorry for that, because yeah, from road traffic. Yes. But can't help. Sorry, really can't help. Wait, let me modify the mic slightly. Maybe this should help a bit, but not much, because this microphone will be able to pick up even that sound, and the way people are blowing the horn, that is crazy. Okay, chalo. So coming back to this topic, so here is the baby, right? Right, sleeping, right? And this one is the placenta. So it is the placenta which is actually the connectivity between mother and the baby, right? So this placenta, this oxygenated blood will be going to placenta, and then that blood would be transmitted to the baby, right? Now see, there would be four major things which will be occurring during this entire process. So before birth, where the entire focus would be that baby should be getting oxygenated blood, bus, right? Baby should be getting oxygenated blood, and after birth, it is like whatever the system which has been established for when the baby was in womb, all those systems, they should be terminated, and baby should be now independently breathing. So there has to be an independent breathing, right? And that's exactly after the first cry, right? When the baby cries, right? And that first cry, it changes everything, right? It changes everything. So that's what really happens. So let's start with the actual process, right? So here it is. So this one would be the placenta, correct? This one would be the placenta. Now this placenta is like a junction, right? It's a junction through which everything would be going to this baby. So from here I'll be drawing first thing, and let's draw it red. This is going towards the heart, so it would be vein. So we'll call it umbilical vein, correct? So this is going towards the heart of the baby, right? So baby's heart, it is going towards baby's heart. So that's why it is vein. Because it is carrying oxygen, that's why it is red. So this was the reason that why we said that there is one exception. Now over here we divided it into two parts. Now this is inside the baby, right? From this point onwards, this is happening inside the baby. It divides it into two parts. Easy. Right and left umbilical vein, right? So far so good, everything easy. Go back to yesterday's topic. That's the liver, right? That's the liver. In liver, things go inside for the processing, right? Hepatic arteries, which is supplying the oxygen from where the CO2 has been taken out. Yes, we'll come to that, right? Because this would be the last point. That's true, right? So the first is will give oxygen, that oxygen will be circulated into the baby, right? And then baby will release CO2, and then that CO2 will be taken out. So that would be where our journey would end, right? So this is right umbilical vein and the left umbilical vein. This right umbilical vein, it goes into what's called as the portal vein, right? Portal vein. So we know that portal vein which is formed by the combination of the superior mesenteric vein and the splenic vein, and inferior mesenteric was landing into the splenic vein, right? Things were like this, and then this was going into the liver, right? So this is the portal vein, this is superior mesenteric vein, this is inferior mesenteric vein, and then there is a splenic vein, right? Here is the spleen, and then that thing goes inside, right? But so here is the point. This umbilical vein, that is the right umbilical vein, it lands here, right? The right umbilical vein. So obviously this oxygen, right, this oxygen which is getting carried by this right umbilical vein and it goes into portal vein, liver is selfish. Liver will straight away use up this entire oxygen, right? Liver will use it because liver will say, "Arey wah," right? This is luxury. This is luxury because as such the original hepatic artery which will be going inside, that is not having any oxygen because baby is not breathing. So whatever is coming directly from the mother, this oxygen, right, this is a jackpot. So liver selfishly uses everything, not thinking about that what the entire body will do, right? So then comes what liver will do. Liver would say, okay, my work is done, and then out are the hepatic veins, correct? Hepatic vein. And this hepatic vein will land into what? It will land into inferior vena cava. True? So far all good, right? If we really make it still more clear, right, this would be much better. So this is like liver, right? Here is our umbilical vein, only one vein, right? Because it is just one vein which divides into right side and left side, and this lands into the portal vein, right? Portal vein, and liver would utilize all oxygen, all done, and then things go out, right? That blood would go out via hepatic vein, right? And this will land into the big one, that is inferior vena cava. Now we know that this inferior vena cava will go where? It will go into the right atrium, right? Very right. From right atrium, it has to go into right ventricle. From right ventricle, it will go into lungs. But wait. Lungs are not functioning. So in that case, this nature thought that there is no point. This is useless it's completely useless to send the blood into the right ventricle. So there has to be something else. We need to do something. So we'll think about it, right? So let's put a question mark over here because there is no point in sending blood to lungs. Meantime, this left side, right, this left umbilical vein which we have not yet touched, this left umbilical vein, it does something very good because this left umbilical vein understands that there is actually no point, literally no point in sending the blood to liver, full blood, bypass the liver. So it bypasses the liver and it lands into inferior vena cava, right? This left umbilical vein, it goes into inferior vena cava, bypasses the liver. See how beautiful the mechanism is. Because it bypasses the liver, that means this oxygen is not utilized and this oxygen will be sent to inferior vena cava. So now inferior vena cava has got khichdi. It has got oxygenated blood, it has got deoxygenated blood. Why? The oxygenated blood which is coming via left umbilical vein and the deoxygenated blood which is coming via this hepatic vein, because selfish liver used up everything and he is sending that CO2, right? So now IVC has got that mixed thing. It has got a mixture, right? It has got a mixture. This mixture, it reaches to right atrium. Now we need to know one name. There is a special duct, right? And I am highlighting this. This is a special duct. And this special duct, which is meant for the connectivity between left umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava, is called as ductus venosus. Ductus venosus. And when we'll dissect the body, right? that is when we'll be doing the dissection, at that point you will see all the evidences that yes, this baby was having a connectivity between left umbilical vein and the infra vena cava, because after birth all these things will go away, but yes, there would be few evidences left out. So that is what we'll see. So first major change what we saw was umbilical vein in case of baby, right, which is not present in after birth. And second, what we saw is the ductus venosus, right, ductus venosus, which is like a connectivity between left umbilical vein and the infra vena cava, and its function is to bypass the liver so that body gets at least some oxygen, not fully. So here the point to understand is that baby will always be getting a mixed blood, baby will never ever be getting a pure oxygenated blood. Very important thing, right, because this is the only source. So for him, always mixed blood. So right atrium will always be getting the mixed blood. Now one more thing, this is right atrium, correct? This is right atrium in which the IVC is landing. But in right atrium, there is one more vessel which is landing, and that is superior vena cava. And superior vena cava is doing what? Superior vena cava is just taking care of that head, neck, brain, right? That is from the upper portion, everything, right? Everything is going over there, right? Upper limb, head, neck, brain, everything landing over here, right? Does this feature may cause some issue in some cases? No, not at all, right? Because this is a natural phenomena. So those tissues, they actually survive even this low oxygen pressure. So they pick up whatever the oxygen is available, right? It is only after birth when the person actually breathes, right, he starts getting the taste of what is called as pure oxygen, right? So that's why there is like one philosophy, means it came in my mind when I read for the first time, that see, no one in the world is going to help you. And this thing is taught by our mother, that see beta, even you are in my womb, but still you will be getting the partially mixed blood. You will get pure oxygenated blood only when you work, right? So this is like a very nice philosophical thing which we are taught right from the beginning, right? So that's why never be dependent on anyone. And I think this one sentence has answered many males, right? I know what means you know to whom I am talking. Okay? Never be dependent on anyone. See, unless and until you work, no one is going to help. I mean, I'm not against any of those rituals, but sometimes I feel that, you know, someone tells कि अरे आपका ये ग्रह खराब है और आपकी ये पनौती है वगैरह वगैरह, and हम आपके लिए पूजा करेंगे, right? And you give this much money. I just feel like that कि यार भूख मुझे लगी है, I want to eat. If you eat, how will I be satisfied? So if anything is to be done, I have to do it by myself. But here also it is the same thing. The day you start breathing by yourself, you get pure oxygen. Yeah, astrology. sorry. Okay, coming back to this. So this SVC, superior vena cava, is also doing what? Superior vena cava is also giving deoxygenated blood, right? Completely used. Oxygen used by this head, neck, upper limb, they have used, and the mixed blood is finally coming over here. This mixed blood, but because it is carrying some oxygen, as it is coming directly from the mother, right? So it is coming up. Right atrium to right ventricle to lungs, no point. Lungs are not at all functioning, right? So there has to be now a major thing. And that is, now we zoom on to the right Now we zoom on to, this is our right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium and the left ventricle, right? Now see, before we start learning one new thing, we understand one principle. Right from the beginning, our tissues are very conjuice, but very intelligent, right? They are pakka businessmen. Now, what exactly that is, right? We'll come to this, our fine heart, right? We understand one. This is, we are inside the lungs. Now, you know that in lungs there is alveoli, right? Alveoli. If this word is difficult, we can say this alveoli is the smallest unit, smallest functioning unit of the lungs. This is where the oxygen, because when we breathe, right, so that oxygen that goes inside, over there is oxygen. And then there is blood vessel, right? These are the capillaries, right? These are the capillaries. Capillaries. So these capillaries, they will take oxygen and they will release carbon dioxide, and then these capillaries will start traveling all the way, and then they will supply this oxygen to the tissues, right? So something interesting occurs, and see how smart they are. How smart they are, right? What they understand is, why should we send the blood in these capillaries if there is no oxygen to carry, right? Literally like those rickshaw वाला और टैक्सी वाला, कि अगर जो पैसेंजर ही नहीं मिलने वाला तो गाड़ी वहाँ पे लेके क्यों जाओ? Same principle. Body thinks, right? This capillaries think that there is no oxygen, na? Because baby is not breathing, right? We are talking about lungs. Baby is not breathing, so that means there is no air. If there is no air, so this is called as hypoxia, correct? That is called as hypoxia. Hypoxia means less oxygen, right? Or no oxygen. There is less oxygen. We can't expect. These are all vessels, right? These are all vessels. Which vessels? Pulmonary, right? So we can write pulmonary, right? Pulmonary. And these vessels, they would think that if there is no blood, so they should shrink. They should constrict, because there is literally no point in dilated blood vessels and then khali chakkar mara and no oxygen, right? No passenger and just cab is going. So they shrink, right? They shrink, right? So they become small, right? They shrink. And this thing is called as vaso. Vaso means vessels. Constriction, that means they become small, right? Constriction. And you have learnt the principle of respiratory system. This is what is called as hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction, right? So this is hypoxia and it is called as hypoxic, right? That means because of hypoxia. Hypoxic means because of hypoxia, pulmonary vasoconstriction. Vaso means vessels, and constriction means they narrow down. Now tell me one thing. What would happen if a vessel narrows down? So it will create a back pressure, right? A wonderful principle of fluid dynamics, or the principle of fluid physics. This is one tube, and when it narrows down, so there would be back pressure, right? The pressure behind, that would be higher. Exactly like highways, right? From highway there is a bridge, and then once again it opens up, but then all the cars, they would be lining up over here, right? So it is the back pressure which would increase. Perfect. Now these are lungs, right? These are lungs, right? So pressure is increased in lungs. So blood was going inside the lungs by what? the lungs, they were getting the blood by who is sending the blood to the lungs? Who is sending blood to the lungs? Which artery? Which artery is sending blood to the lungs? Question. Type it. Lungs, they are getting blood. Exactly. Pulmonary artery. Right? So it is the pulmonary artery, right, which is sending the blood. Now this pulmonary artery or the pulmonary trunk, yeah, exactly, Anand, very right. So this pulmonary artery which is coming out of right ventricle, correct, it is coming out of right ventricle. So right ventricle, the pressure would start rising. That right ventricle where there is a tricuspid valve, right, there is a tricuspid valve, so again the pressure would be transmitted back and it would be transmitted back to right atrium, correct, right atrium. In right atrium, already the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, they are getting the blood. So right atrium is now under pressure because there is no way they can move forward and the blood is coming. So now the entire attack is on right atrium. Am I clear? Am I clear in this? Because right atrium, the simple principle, right atrium is now under high pressure, tremendously high pressure. Why this pressure is high? Because the blood is getting into the right atrium via superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and the blood is to go to right ventricle, but right ventricle says kya re aage rasta band hai, right? Lungs are totally choked up. I can't send blood to them. Back pressure, right? So that goes to right ventricle and that back pressure leads to high pressure into the right atrium. Perfect. Now we go back to our lungs. So it is this right atrium which is now under pressure. Out of the entire heart, right atrium is under attack now. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, they are sending the blood, right? What happened? So superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, they are sending the blood. So here comes the third change. And this change is, when we'll be studying anatomy of atrium, that is heart, this is right atrium, this is left atrium. So this portion, which is the wall which is between right atrium and left atrium, it is between two atria. So that's why can I call it like say international, so right, between two nations, inter-school competition between two schools. So this is between two atria. So inter-atrial septum, correct? Inter-atrial septum, a septum which is between two atria, right atrium and left atrium. This is when it happens after birth. But before birth, God has made one beautiful arrangement. What he said, that there is no point in sending the blood to those lungs, correct? So bypass the blood. So this blood now bypasses and there is a hole which is created. This is like a valve. So this blood, it trickles down into the left atrium. This is the arrangement. Blood trickles down and it occurs only in case when there is a fetal circulation, right? If it happens, if this hole persists, so then what happens? See, then becomes a dangerous thing, right? Then it becomes a dangerous thing because then the blood, which is clearly defined, oxygenated and deoxygenated, then it starts getting mixed and then that leads to so many complications. So this is a hole. This is a foramen, and that is what is called as the foramen ovale. Foramen ovale, right? Because this is a practical hole, foramen. This is oval shaped, so it is foramen ovale. Deepak, fossa ovalis is that portion that is after birth, this hole, that flap goes back. But still you can see the remnants of that foramen ovale in the form of a depression. And that's why in real heart, in adult heart, when you dissect, so you will find a very fine depression. And that depression tells that yes, when this baby was inside the womb, this was the point from where the blood was getting passed from right atrium to left atrium, right? But now everything is sealed up, so still those remnants, right, those left out things, right, that is like a stone which has been kept, that once upon a time there was foramen ovale here, and that landmark is fossa ovalis, right? We'll come to this fossa ovalis. So let the baby be born, right? Right now he's inside. So here is right atrium to left atrium, right? One more thing. Even if there is a hole, at what point does it seal up? Before birth or after? Obviously, Kurat, it has to be after, because before birth, if this thing seals, baby would die. Because if this seals before birth, what would happen? Because this is the only blood which is having oxygen. Whatever, thoda bahut, jo kuch bhi oxygen hai, which is coming from the mother, this is the only point where the oxygen is there. If this point is sealed, so now where would this blood go? It has got only one option, but to go at right ventricle. Right ventricle to lungs, so they would say, so sorry, right? We just can't, because lungs are soaked into liquid. So they just can't breathe. Everything is in fluid, right? Everything is in fluid. So baby can't breathe. So baby just gulps, and their lungs, they are not at all functioning. It is only after the birth, with that first cry, when that air goes and it shifts the fluid, and then the first breathing starts, right? That's why after birth, right, if the baby is not crying, it's slapped, right? Satak, right? The baby should start crying. In such a pressure of blood, how it gets sealed? We'll come to that, because that's where the physics would come, right? That's where physics would come up. So, got it? You know, when I was reading this topic in library, right, I honestly am telling, I did like this. Oh, boss, mast, wow, yaar. Literally, I did that, and then all seniors said, hey, dhire. Right? Literally, I did like that. So, means before birth, only liver is working? That's right. Liver is working. Liver works. Acha, chalo. हाथ ही धुलाई. अच्छा. Really? So now left atrium. Now see, next thing what happens. Still there is some blood which trickles into the right ventricle. Still, right? Though there is a nice foramen ovale. Oh yes, it is so beautiful, and by the time when you'll finish this, right, when we'll actually go for the birth, and then what changes occur, you'll be very happy to see that, right? Please avoid these mails, anyone from Bangladesh or anyone from here, please, right? Just focus on yourself, just study. So now some blood still trickles into right ventricle, right? Not much, but some. Now the body is unhappy. Okay, what is this? This blood, ye to bichara waste gaya, right? Now what happens? So now we focus on right ventricle. See another mechanism which is coming up. From right ventricle, it is the pulmonary trunk. Am I right? It is the pulmonary trunk, and from pulmonary trunk things were going to lungs. Okay, so our next focus is on pulmonary trunk, right? This was the concept, so I'm just writing the concept. This was the concept which we understood. Okay, so here is our right ventricle. Through right ventricle, there is pulmonary trunk, right, which will be divided into two parts, and it will go into the lungs, right, it will go into the lungs. Putting across, because lungs are not functioning, right, lungs, it has to be right, left, ठीक है, so it's not functioning. And this thing will go from right ventricle, right. Over here, very near to it, there is our all-time favorite aorta, which is going, right, aorta. This aorta and pulmonary trunk, they are overlapping, they are over each other, right, they are quite near to each other. So it happens like, to be very frank, it goes something like this. So here is the aorta, and that pulmonary trunk, it will actually go beneath, it will go like this, sorry, right, so it will go like this. So now this pulmonary trunk would think that whatever the blood which I am getting, in any case if it goes to lungs, it's a waste, so let's push this blood back into the aorta and create a bypass, another creation. This is, so it creates a channel, this channel, right, this one, which is between pulmonary trunk and aorta, right, which is between pulmonary trunk and aorta. This is what, this is a sort of artery, they both are arteries, right, and we are forming a duct, right, so it is called as ductus. Previously it was a vein, right, which was between left umbilical vein, and it was going into the portal, so we created a duct, but because it was between veins, we called it ductus venosus. Now this is the duct which we are creating between a pulmonary artery and our big boss aorta. Both are super duper fantastic arteries, so we'll call this ductus arteriosus, a duct between arteries, arteriosus. And this ductus arteriosus is because whatever the bacha khucha blood, whatever the blood which has escaped into the right ventricle, from there it will go to the pulmonary trunk. There is no point in sending it to lungs, so via ductus arteriosus it will be shifted to aorta. It would be shifted to aorta. How nice, how nice. And this aorta is coming out from left ventricle. Now see how interesting the things are. The majority of the blood is coming via right atrium. Via foramen ovale, it will come into left atrium, right? It is coming into left atrium. Via left atrium, it is coming into left ventricle. From left ventricle, it will come into aorta, right? And meantime, whatever the blood which escaped, it reached into right ventricle, it reached to that pulmonary trunk via ductus arteriosus, it is rerouted, and now it is back into the aorta. So now aorta has got the full supply, whether direct or indirect, but it has got the entire blood, nothing is wasted. How fantastic, right? Amazing. These are the mechanisms. This is how it really goes, that over here the idea is why to waste even smallest amount of blood, because there is already a compromise, there is already less amount of oxygen available, right? Everything is so much of compromise. So that is the ductus arteriosus. But this ductus arteriosus, right, is a passive tube. What happens to deoxygenated blood? Deoxygenated blood, Anish, it keeps on circulating, right? So something is to be done to take it out. Now we'll be coming to that. But right now we focus only on the oxygenated blood. So our responsibility was that chalo, take this oxygenated blood, push it into the aorta, and this aorta will take to all the way to the entire body. Right? Whatever the oxygen is available, that is taken to the entire body. Right? So this aorta will take it to body. And that mechanism is clear, right? So it divides, it has got all those divisions, it goes, those carotids are there, then subclavians are there, right? It go to upper limb, lower limb, it will go to pelvis, everywhere, and it circulates. Okay. More is yet to come. We understand one fantastic principle, and that principle will help us that what would happen when these things are to be reversed. Ductus arteriosus is a tube, right? It's a tube. Right now, though, it is okay, right? Think it like that pulmonary trunk, right? Pulmonary trunk is under high pressure, correct? It is under high pressure. Right atrium to right ventricle to pulmonary trunk, high pressure. There is a duct, that is ductus arteriosus. So no problems, ductus arteriosus. And this aorta, bichara aorta is not under high pressure. So blood would gracefully go through the ductus arteriosus into the aorta. But this ductus arteriosus is kept open by one more mechanism. This is where the chemical systems would come into picture. Ductus arteriosus remains open. It remains open because of one very interesting chemical. And that chemical is called as prostaglandins. Prostaglandins. And this prostaglandin is secreted by our, thanks to mother, by placenta. It is by placenta. So placenta secretes that prostaglandin. But through hepatic veins, some amount of CO2 is passed in aorta through IVC. Through hepatic vein, some amount of CO2 is passed in aorta through IVC. Well, don't confuse. See, via hepatic vein, right? We made it very clear via hepatic vein that CO2, not some, the entire CO2, it will go into IVC. Via IVC, it will finally reach to aorta, no problems. Definitely 100%, yes, that's what we said. That IVC is getting the CO2. IV is getting CO2 not only from the hepatic vein, but it is also getting all the CO2 from SVC and IVC. Right? From SVC also it is getting. Superior vena cava is also dumping the CO2. IVC is also dumping the CO2. But thanks to thanks to that ductus venosus, right? Ductus venosus. It is the ductus venosus which is like a lifesaver. It is this ductus venosus through which the oxygen is sent. That mother's oxygen is sent via left umbilical vein, right? Via left umbilical vein. So this oxygen which goes and it reaches. So IVC, yes, I mean over here I should have written not IVC, but I should have written right atrium, correct? This is right atrium. So right atrium is getting mixed blood. That's the principle. Yes, so through hepatic vein some amount of, no, entire amount of CO2 is passing into the aorta through IVC, but we don't have to worry about it. CO2 though is definitely there, large amount, but there is a hope, and that is the oxygen which we are getting. We want to utilize this oxygen. So baby's body is right from the beginning struggling. So now if you say that yes, there is so much of struggle in medical science, this, that, everything, forget, I always told you one thing. You are the best of the best of the best, right? Right from the beginning, when there were about 100 million sperms, right? Out of those 100 million sperm, it was only one sperm which was the most powerful, most fantastic, just amazing, and that's you. Otherwise, if had it been some other sperm, so then you would not have existed, right? Someone else would have taken birth. So because you were the best right from the beginning, no doubt about it, and you learned how to survive in the most compromised situation, because till your birth you were getting, till you took the breath, right, you were always using that mixed blood, right? You were never getting the pure oxygenated blood which you are breathing right now, which you are taking right now. So it was always a mixed blood. So then why to worry? Right from the beginning, when you were the best and you were fighting, so no problem at all, right? But percentage of CO2 is more now, definitely more, but there is some oxygen. But body learns how to use that oxygen. That less oxygen, that is utilized, right? So that's the point. That's the point. It is less oxygen, but that less oxygen is utilized by the body, right? So baby never gets must first class oxygenated blood, bilkul compromised. But that's why we are fighters, right? Okay, so you got this point. So it is the prostaglandin. That's very important concept, right? You will understand its importance just in a minute, right? That this prostaglandin, see how smartly God has created this, that prostaglandin is to be secreted by placenta. And this prostaglandin is what is keeping that ductus arteriosus open, right? Ductus arteriosus open. Bus. Got it? This is fine. Now we move further. Let's move on to our aorta. Now we are focusing on aorta. So from aorta, now from yesterday's session, we know that aorta, when it goes down into the abdomen, and then it divides into common iliac, correct? It divides into common iliac artery, right and left, and that common iliac divides into external iliac, right? External iliac and internal iliac, correct? Internal iliac artery. I'm not writing full because I know that you know it properly, right? So common iliac, see, this is left common iliac. Similarly, this is right common iliac artery. It divides into two, right? And this external iliac artery, they would continue as femoral, correct? Femoral artery, and that femoral artery will go all the way to the lower limb, right? Right lower limb, and same way on the opposite side over here also, it is the femoral, and then it goes for the lower limb. So then CO2 remains in the heart as it is, or it gets utilized? No. CO2 is mixed in the blood, na? So it is circulating into the entire body. CO2 is not like those packets and they will remain into the heart. CO2 is mixed into the blood. So CO2 and O2, they both are circulating into the entire body. But now see what happens, right? So it is the lower limb, right? It goes into the lower limb. Interestingly, now what happens is that this internal iliac, right? Those internal iliac, each internal iliac, they give rise to umbilical artery, because it is going from the heart, right? So this is umbilical artery. That's the reason we have got two umbilical arteries, right? So this is one umbilical, right? So this is right umbilical artery, left umbilical artery, because they are emerging from internal iliac. They are emerging from, say, internal iliac artery. See how nice. The blood, so every time mixed blood is circulated, 100%. Every time mixed blood is circulated. That's what I was trying to say, that you are fighter right from the beginning, right? So now, why to worry? So this is umbilical artery, this is umbilical artery, and they are carrying that CO2, right? They are carrying that CO2, and they will be going all the way to the placenta, right? This is how the blood is brought back to the placenta. Now if you really see, this entire system is tangled like this, right? So there is like say umbilical artery, right? One umbilical vein, right? This is umbilical vein, which is one, and those umbilical arteries, right? They are in pair. They are going like this, right? They are going like this. They are in pair, right? So they go like this. And there is a reason behind it. Okay, why and here is the placenta, right? Here is the placenta. Now this entire system is packed, right? And there is a jelly. This entire system is very nicely packed and in a jelly. And that jelly is called as the Wharton's jelly. Wharton's jelly. So this assembly, right? So there is umbilical vein. Surrounding it, there are those umbilical arteries, that is 2 umbilical artery, and this entire thing is packed into that Wharton's jelly. So it becomes very flexible, but because inside environment is absolutely cold, right? So it remains into that state, right? So all these veins and arteries, they are patent, they are fully open, and the blood is moving back and forth, right? So everything is fine. So here it is. This is how the circulation keeps on going, right? Everything clear? Any doubt till this point? Because we are about to take that Smarty now out into this world, right? He is about to land on earth and see what changes would occur. Any doubt till this point? Is this the reason why unborn baby have gamma chain in hemoglobin? Well, yes, that's right. When we'll be going for the hemoglobin, yes, there is a gamma chain. That's right. Because they have to actually survive in a very less oxygen. So that's why their oxygen carrying capacity has to be high. So that whatever the oxygen is available, pick it up and send it to the tissue, so the tissues can actually use it, and tissue has to grow, right? Grow and develop. Because after birth, so it is the growth. Development, so it has already occurred, right? So that's how the things go. Very quickly, in just one word, babies like jelly even before birth. Yes, they like jelly before birth also. That's right. Babies क्या यार, बड़े होने के बाद भी we like to have jellies, right? Don't you? So here it is. Here is the mother, right? Mother, that goes, this is the placenta, that placenta which sends the blood to via umbilical vein, that umbilical vein which divides into right and the left umbilical vein, right side from where it goes to head, blood goes to head and neck region. I mean which vein? Well, first blood will go into head and neck region, not via the vein, but it will go via the aorta, right? And aorta is already there, correct? So anyway, you'll get the answer now. So umbilical vein, this right side, it will go into the liver, right? And the blood will come out via hepatic vein, right? Hepatic vein, and it will land into IVC, inferior vena cava, right? Over here, we change the color. This oxygenated blood, right? This is the oxygen blood. So it goes into the inferior vena cava, right? Mixed blood. So what could be the threshold limit of oxygen below that baby can? No. Don't worry, right? Well, baby survives even under low oxygen level. But this oxygen level is sufficient, because if the oxygen level drops below certain level, so that is where if the placenta is detached, all those pathologies, right? That is what you learn in obstetrics. That is, if the placenta gets detached, so obviously there would be lack of blood supply and the baby dies. It leads to stillbirth. Yes, baby, it is other way around. Baby cries because of the shrink lung opens and it hurt them. No, it is because when the baby cries, then the lungs open. It is other way around. And that reflex of crying, it is natural reflex. So here it is. So that oxygenated blood, and this one is our ductus venosus, correct? Ductus venosus. And then from IVC, things will go into the right atrium, right? Right atrium. It is baby born dead, yeah. That's what I said, that any of these mechanisms, if they go wrong, baby won't be able to survive, right? That's why this is very intricate mechanism. So right atrium, where there is superior vena cava, right, which is all the blood which has been utilized by head and neck and brain, and that right atrium. From right atrium, there is a bypass, right? There is a bypass which takes it to left atrium, and that bypass will call that thing as foramen ovale, right? Foramen ovale. The blood which will be going via right atrium to right ventricle, there is no point in sending that blood. So from right ventricle, it will go to pulmonary trunk, right? And then left atrium to left ventricle, and left ventricle is going into this aorta, right? So then there would be one more connectivity, and that is what we'll call as the ductus arteriosus, correct? Ductus arteriosus. So that is the pulmonary trunk. Whatever the blood which is there, it is pushed into the aorta. Is there any extra load on umbilical vein in case of twins? Definitely. Definitely. That's the reason when there are twins, many times they are compromised, right? So from aorta, now this was the question, right, which was asked. So from this aorta, now this is, aorta is the richest person now, because it has got that whatever the oxygenated blood which is available, it is there, right? And from here it starts going into the body, right? When we say body, it is the arch of aorta. So those carotids, they will be taking blood above onto the brain. Subclavians, they will be taking it to upper limbs, right? From below, it will divide, right? It will go down, it will divide. And those external iliac, they will be taking blood to the lower limb into the form of femorals, right? And that's how the body would be oxygenated. But it is the internal iliac, that is right and left. They will be now going to form umbilical arteries. So there will be two umbilical arteries, and those two umbilical arteries which will be carrying CO2, that will go back into the placenta, right? And it will go back to mother, where the CO2 O2 exchange, and then once again the blood comes back in its fresh state. So this is the cycle which keeps on going before birth, right? Before birth. Points to be highlighted. What happens? Umbilical vein, very important thing. Second, ductus venosus, right? Very, very vital thing, because it is because of this ductus venosus the body is getting whatever the oxygen which is there. Foramen ovale, one of the best portion, because the whole blood is getting shunted to the left side so that it gets pure blood. And our fourth one is the ductus arteriosus, right? So that bacha kucha blood, whatever, nothing is to be wasted, so everything is pushed into the aorta and it works. And obviously finally the major another change, that is two umbilical arteries, right? So these are the things which are into the baby before birth. all set, right? So now here is the, and here is the birth, right? So now that one, right? So we need to make him or her cry, right? Right? Though may laugh, right? But we need to make her cry, and that's the first cry, right? Now, the obviously, so let's make it like, right, with those eyes closed, right? With those eyes closed. And that's the first cry. And the moment baby cries, the air, right? You try when you cry. So when the baby cries, deep breathe and right. So with heavy pressure, right? Right. With heavy pressure, that air gushes into the lungs. So now large amount of air, it goes into the lungs. When that thing happens, remember one. Yeah, all is well, right? So now in the lungs, that's the alveoli, right? That's the alveoli. This alveoli is now having oxygen. So it is no more hypoxic. So that entire mechanism of hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction, right? Hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction is no more existing because there is no hypoxia. Why the eyelids of the baby are closed after the birth? No, they open, right? It is just they don't want that when they are crying, right? They keep their eyes closed so that they can cry with good power, right? Try to cry with open eyes and try to cry with closed eyes. You'll find that when you cry with closed eyes, it is more powerful, right? So they have got that much intelligence. Just kidding. So this is hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction, but now there is no hypoxia, right? So this mechanism is shut down. So in other words, those blood vessels which were surrounding, they'll say, "Arey, now the oxygen is there, now the passengers are there, so keep this road open," right? Keep this thing open, so they dilate. So these arterioles, they dilate, right? These pulmonary arterioles, they dilate. The moment they dilate, what would happen? When they would dilate, there is space, right? So there is space. So the pressure is decreased, right? Previously, to all the vessels, they were constricted. So now they are open, right? So now the blood can go in. So pressure is released, right? Pressure is released. So this will affect. Blood was coming to these lungs from, well, it was coming from pulmonary trunk, correct? So pulmonary trunk, this was the right ventricle, right? Right ventricle, so right atrium. So finally, who will be the most happiest person? Right atrium. Pressure decreased, right? Now the blood can easily go all the way into the lungs. So this is the blood which is trickling all the way into the lungs. Pressure is released, right? So let's go back to right atrium and see what happens over there. So this is one important mechanism where, say, we have came to that why this first cry is so vital, right? This first cry. We are now into the right atrium. So here is the right atrium. And this is the situation. Previously, here there was high pressure. So that's why blood was going. But now this pressure is released. So this pressure now drops. When the pressure drops, So this means now there would be less blood which will be trickling on the opposite side, right? So the blood which is going on the opposite side, that would decrease. Why should it go? Because when there is such a nice path available, right? So from right atrium to right ventricle, and it is wonderfully going via pulmonary trunk, all the way into the lungs. Such clean path is available. So then why to go via this narrow path, right? So it goes. Meantime, when this is happening, right, so blood is going, this foramen ovale, right, then foramen ovale thinks कि बस इतना ही मेरा काम था, right, foramen ovale. So this foramen ovale tells कि चलो bye bye, right. So this foramen ovale, as this pressure drops, so now there is relatively high pressure, right, into the left atrium. So when this pressure, relatively high pressure, because this right atrial pressure drops, right, he becomes like a side hero. So now this flap, blood tries to go in reverse direction, but no, body will say that is not allowed because this is like a one-way valve. So this flap closes, foramen ovale closes because of pressure difference, Now because the blood tries to go back, as the right atrium pressure drops, so it tries to go back, it closes. Yes, SA node is definitely there and it works, surely, definitely it works. So left atrium is now proper, right, is high, it won't allow. So now this is the change, that foramen ovale closes, right, foramen ovale closes, and it remains closed because now the pressure in the right atrium is less as compared to left atrium. So gradually that flap remains over there and then it fuses. So in adult heart, when we do the dissection, over there, right, you will find a fossa. Fossa means a depression. That is what is called as the fossa. So the entire interatrial septum, and then there will be a small khadda, fossa. That is called as the fossa ovalis. And that's why it is said that this is the fossa ovalis where once upon a time there was foramen ovale, and it is because of that foramen ovale you survived, right? Foramen ovale closes because of pressure. Within seconds it is not becoming fossa ovalis. Foramen ovale, it closes because of pressure, right? You got it? Here this is like a flap. When the blood was going like this flap was remaining open. But when the blood tries to go back, it sticks, right? Because now the pressure on this side is high, so it won't let it open. So when it remains as it is, then after some time, it fuses completely. If any case, if foramen fails to close, what will happen? Very right. That is what is called as the patent foramen ovale, right? When it is not fusing. So that is one of the congenital anomaly in which this fossa should be closed. But sometimes, see what happens. This is the interatrial wall, right? That flap is like this. So when the reverse pressure comes, it closes. But what if this flap is slightly lower? So even it closes at this point. So this middle junction, that remains open, that remains patent. So that patent foramen ovalis, that leads to, say, this gap in the interatrial septum, right? So this so many conditions are there, but out of this, one of this thing in which there would be mixing of the blood, right? So here closure of fossa patent, this foramen ovale, that is immediate. As soon as the pressure difference is there, it gets closed. And because that flap will remain over there, gradually it will heal. So hole in interatrial septum, yes, if the foramen ovale is not closed, right? Foramen ovale is not closed, not because that pressure was not there, but because that flap was smaller and it couldn't reach to that surface. Yeah, there is treatment, means surgeries are there, right, and the repairs are done. Okay, so far all good. Now we move on to the next part, and that part is from right atrium, right, from right atrium we move on to right ventricle. From right ventricle we move on to pulmonary trunk. From pulmonary trunk, now see, blood is going to lungs, correct, but then here is aorta, and there is that junction, right, that junction, and this was what? Ductus between arteries, so ductus arteriosus, ductus arteriosus. Now this ductus arteriosus is not like a valve, is not like a valve. There would be two-way transmission because this is just like a tube, right, this is just like a tube. So as soon as the pulmonary trunk, right, pulmonary trunk, the pressure drops, the pressure in aorta is always high because it is the left ventricle which is beating now. So that beats with a power, right. There is always a higher pressure into the aorta after birth as compared to venous system, right. So now the baby has taken birth, pressure in the aorta rises. So there would be temporary shift of the blood from aorta, and the blood starts trickling back. Blood starts going back from aorta to pulmonary trunk. Previously it was going from pulmonary trunk to aorta. Now it goes from aorta to pulmonary trunk. But this is temporary, right? This is what is called as the temporary reversal of shunt, right? It is like a shunt, right? It is like a bypass which was from pulmonary trunk to aorta. So now it is going back. But then comes our that knowledge that placenta, man, where are you? Placenta said that after birth I told you goodbye, right? So this placenta was releasing what? This placenta was releasing prostaglandins, right? It was this prostaglandin which was keeping this ductus venosus open. Am I right? It was this prostaglandin. But now because there is no placenta, so that means there is no prostaglandin. So there is no one to tell ductus arteriosus, man, you remain open. Correct? So after some time, right, it takes some time, ductus arteriosus in absence of prostaglandin starts shrinking. So this one, right, this ductus arteriosus shrinks in absence of prostaglandins, right? This is prostaglandin. In absence of prostaglandin, ductus arteriosus gradually shrinks, right? Again, when it shrinks, so it will say that I should also raise some monument, right? Because then else who would remember me, right? Who would remember me that yes, once upon a time I was like ductus arteriosus. So it shrinks, and now it is called as the ligamentum arteriosum. It becomes ligament, right? A very dry band, and yes, in the dissection we will be able to see all these things. So ligamentum arteriosum, right? It's very easy name because it was previously a duct, but now that duct is closed, so it becomes like a strap, and that is ligamentum arteriosum. Fine. So here that is the flattened out dried ductus arteriosus. So this is done. Next, now where exactly are we? We are now to that point, that aorta, right? So let's move on to the aorta, right? This aorta is going down is dividing into two parts, right? That is common iliacs. It is dividing into external iliac, which is going for the lower limb, and this one is the internal iliac, right? Similarly, this one is the internal iliac, and this one is the external, which is going down in the form of femoral and for the lower limbs. Same way over here. So this internal iliac, they are forming the umbilical arteries, right? They are forming those umbilical arteries. But these umbilical arteries, now there is no function, right? There is no function, because when they will go further, there is no placenta. That Wharton's jelly, that also shrinks. So this entire complex, right? This entire complex, which was of umbilical vein and umbilical artery, right? It shrinks, right? All these, because there is no placenta now. There is no placenta. So that cord, umbilical cord, right? After some time, it gets detached. So internally, now what we are discussing is internally. So this was the vessel, right? Now that vessel is not there, right? It has got nothing. So that part gets converted. It takes another form, right? This portion, it becomes superior vesical arteries. Superior vesical or vesical arteries. Vesical means bladder, right? So these are the arteries which will be supplying to urinary bladder. So they will supply to the urinary bladder, right? So rest of the portion is all shrunken. So far everything fine. There is only one thing which is left out. The return journey, that is that umbilical vein which was coming, right? Umbilical vein which was coming from placenta, but now there is no placenta. So this vein is also gone. This umbilical vein also, that is outside. Inside the body, it was dividing into two parts, right? It was dividing into two parts. One which was a right umbilical vein, and this was the left umbilical vein. Umbilical cord is clipped after birth, because so that the blood is to be stopped, right? It is clipped so that, otherwise it is highly vascular thing, no? So that's why it is clipped, so that you can cut it. And then post birth, that placenta is taken out. So that is from on the part of mother, right? And for the part of baby, because see, this is a connection. So it is clipped, it is clamped on both the sides, and then it is cut, right? So this is the connection which is broken, and then the baby cries and all these things, they move on. Otherwise, say if the umbilical cord is not cut, so then how to manage this, right? And this is the umbilicus. So that's why that is like a landmark, that this was the area from where, say, you were connected to the mother via that umbilical cord, that, and it was this umbilical cord which was sending oxygen and it was taking out the carbon dioxide. Sorry. So here it is now, right and left. Right, which was going into the liver, right, which was going into the liver. So via the portal one, right, portal vein, it was going into the portal vein, and left one which was going into the inferior vena cava via ductus venosus. Now both of them, they are not needed, right? Both of them, they are not needed. So in that case, they get converted to ligament. They shrink, right? They shrink. And when they shrink, this ductus venosus, yes, you must have guessed the name, and you are right. Ligamentum venosum. That's right. Now it would be seen as a like this, like a strip-like structure, cord-like structure, and that is called as the ligamentum venosum, which tells that once upon a time I was the hero sending the only blood, only oxygenated blood by which you have survived, right? But now you'll say कि बस पुरानी यादें, right? And that पुरानी यादें is ligamentum venosum. Meantime, this portion, this one, that right umbilical vein, right? He tells that ठीक है, I was not giving any oxygen, but at least my role was there, right? So don't ignore me. So that right umbilical vein, that also gets closed, and its remnant, right? Those purani yade, they are now called as the round ligament, right? They are called as the round ligament of liver, because say it was going into liver, right? So that's why round ligament of liver. So right umbilical vein becomes round ligament of liver. Left umbilical vein, it becomes ligamentum venosum. How nice to remember. R for round ligament of liver and left for ligamentum venosum. You never forget, right? That right sided becomes round, RR, and the left sided becomes ligament, LL, so that we never forget, right? And that's how the entire circulation, then it lives happily forever, right? Like that story, and they lived happily thereafter, right? So if we say that just before birth, right, before and after, previously, right, 4 major changes. One which was like foramen ovale, right, foramen ovale, right? Now you should be able to visualize foramen ovale, right atrium to left atrium, that flap, right, and the blood was going. So now it becomes like fossa ovalis, right, because it is closed. So it is now fossa ovalis, right? In exam, they ask you all sorts of these questions, but once you have understood, any question asked from the fetal circulation is like a cakewalk, right? So fossa ovalis. Then next one was the ductus arteriosus, right? Remember, ductus arteriosus, name itself is telling between two arteries, between two big boss arteries, right? Pulmonary trunk and our all-time beauty, aorta, right? And now it will be converted to, all are now ligaments only. So ligamentum arteriosum, right? Ligamentum arteriosum. The third one, third change, that was the umbilical artery, right? Umbilical arteries. So those umbilical arteries, they said, we don't want to say go forever, so we'll keep on working in the form of superior vesical arteries, so that we'll keep on supplying the urinary bladder, right? So that part is done. Meantime, umbilical veins, they said that, well, our work is over, right? So umbilical vein, right, not veins, and here it has to be umbilical arteries, right, because they are two. Umbilical vein has to be one only, because it is only one, and then it divides, right? So this umbilical vein, it would say that I've got two parts, right? One was the right side would be converted to R for R, and that is round ligament of liver. So in the liver dissection, I'll be able to actually show you that here is the round ligament of liver. And then you have to say that this is like those boli bisri yade, right? When once upon a time it was right umbilical vein was feeding to selfish liver, right? And then comes all the way our left umbilical vein, which said that it is because of you who you survived, which was once upon a time called as the ductus venosus. Ductus venosus, name itself is telling between the veins. So over here it was the left umbilical vein and the IVC, inferior vena cava. Now the work is over. So once again it is now converted to ligamentum, name remains the same, venosum, right? Ligamentum venosum. So that's it, right? Baby is now into this world, welcome to world, and now we can have pure oxygenated breathe, right? So this was how the whole thing works. See how interesting the whole thing is, right? So many mechanisms, and they are on completely automated systems, completely automated, and they occur one after another using so many principles of science, right? That's where medical fascinates. Means it's like we learn about routers, we learn about firewalls. Recently, you must have heard that All India Institute of Medical Sciences, right? Their server has been hacked. More than say 40 million patients' data is at stake, and hackers, they have asked for 200 crore rupees of cryptocurrency. Well, all those systems, they are interesting, they are complicated, but against the medical part, when you learn, you feel that those supercomputers, they are nowhere near how the body works, right? It is so amazing. So thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure teaching these topics, right? And here is, this is our now happy, right? Who loves jelly? Right? What is the superior artery to say urinary bladder? Means the artery which is supplying, there are multiple arteries, right? There will be multiple arteries which will be supplying the urinary bladder. So this is superior artery, this is one of the artery which will be supplying to urinary bladder. Yeah, now let the baby sleep, right? Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Take care, and bye-bye. Revision, though, I think we have done so many times.